In the last lesson, we got everything hooked up and displaying data for a new Star Wars character each time the random button is pushed, and it's pretty cool. Now, we could move on to the other screens at this point. However, I want to first show you a few different ways of doing what we have already done. First, we are going to redo our network request with Alamofire, a networking library that abstracts some of the more clunky parts of URL session. Then we are going to use another library called SwiftlyJSON to help us make parsing less painful. And finally, we are going to make both of the previous parsing methods almost obsolete with the new codable protocol. So let's get started by talking about how we are going to get those first two libraries we discussed. We need a way to get the Alamofire and SwiftlyJSON library code into our project. When we have a third-party code library in our project that we are using, we call that a dependency. We depend on that code. To help us manage our dependencies, we are going to use a dependency manager called CocoaPods. Now, if you already have CocoaPods installed and know how to use it, feel free to skip this lesson. I'll throw up here the pods we will be using. You can pause it and add those in, and we'll start with Alamofire in the next lesson. Otherwise, I'm going to walk you through how to install and use CocoaPods. So first thing, go ahead and open up a browser and search for CocoaPods. And it's spelled just like that, CocoaPods. And that should be the first result that pops up for you. Go ahead and click on that. All right, so what is CocoaPods? It says here it's a dependency manager for Swift and Objective-C Cocoa projects. It has over 51,000 libraries and is used in over 3 million apps. Wow, so CocoaPods can help you scale your projects elegantly. Basically, we don't want to reinvent the wheel every time we try to do something. If there's already a well-built out solution out there, why not use it? And so we can actually search for some of these libraries in here. For instance, if you search for, say, image, and we have here image slideshow, image picker, image viewer. Let's take a look at this image picker here. And you can see here image picker 3.1.0, and you have a link to the GitHub right here. This looks pretty nice. It's an all-in-one camera solution for your iOS app. It lets your users select images from the library, yada yada. Looks pretty good. And so what you would normally do is you would find one that you like maybe, or you could find it just Googling regularly. And then you come down here and there's usually going to be a location where it says how to install. Here we go. So image picker is available through CocoaPods. To install it, simply add the following line to your pod file. So you would just add that to your pod file. All right, well, what's a pod file? How do we get started using these? All right. Before we look at that, a quick word about using CocoaPods. All right, so I said if there's already a well built out solution out there, why not use it? This doesn't mean that anytime you need to do anything, the first thing you should do is go and see if there's a CocoaPod for it. Otherwise, you'll end up with just a ton of CocoaPods in your code, and that's not good either. Another thing to do is to make sure that the CocoaPod that you're looking at using is well maintained. Check out how many open issues there are on their GitHub. See how many stars there are. Check the commits and see when the last one was. You want to make sure that it is a well-maintained library and that you're not going to use something and get stuck with something that is not well maintained or could be troublesome for you down the road. All right, so just keep those things in mind when you're taking a look at CocoaPods. Make sure there's a fair amount of stars, that there aren't a lot of open old issues, and make sure it's well maintained. All right. So we have a couple of options. There are two ways. One is via terminal, and the other is with their app that they have come out with. Personally, I prefer the app. I learned it with using terminal, and still use it in terminal if I'm already in terminal in the project. But for new projects, I'll typically set up my CocoaPods using the app. We're going to go through both methods, starting with terminal. Okay, so if you check out install here, we can check out the guides. And it's pretty simple. All we have to do is, it says here that CocoaPods is built with Ruby and will be installable with the default Ruby available on Mac OS. And all we got to do is open up terminal. So I'm just going to open up terminal here and bump up the font size. You can do that using Command plus, and you can shrink it with Command minus, okay? And I'm just going to go ahead and copy this right here. So sudo means that you are giving it admin permissions. If you don't want to use sudo, then you can do it with here the sudo less installation. So you could just follow those instructions. I don't really think there's a problem using the sudo gem install. So I'm going to copy that and just paste that right here. Now I already have it installed, but this will probably update it for me if I have an older version than what is currently there. And it will ask you for your password. This is your computer admin password. And you won't see any characters show or anything, so don't be concerned if you don't see anything show up. Just type it in and press enter. And then it'll go through and install it. All right, so that was quick. So it might take a little bit longer if you haven't installed it before, but now we have CocoaPods. All right, so how do we go ahead and get our project set up with CocoaPods? I'm gonna create a new little demo project for this. I'm gonna create a new project, just a single view app, and I'm gonna call this CocoaPods Demo. And if you want, you can follow along creating a new project, or you can do this in your Star Trivia app. And I'm gonna say next. And I'm just gonna put this on the desktop. There we go. So now what you need to do is we need to get into that project in terminal. All right, so I'm gonna say CD and CD desktop. And then we called it CocoaPods Demo. So if you, little tip here, if you have started to type it out, you can press Tab and it will autocomplete once it is unique enough. Okay, so I'm going to CD into that project there. So if I do PWD, we now see that we are in the project. If I do ls, it will list out the files in this directory. All right, so what we want to do is we want to initialize what is called a pod file, okay? And the way to do that is to simply say pod init. There we go. And now if we open up that project, sorry, my desktop's a bit of a mess right now. So I'm gonna open up the project, and now you'll see that we have this pod file here. And if you right click and say open with, and go ahead and just pick your favorite text editor. I'm just gonna do it in text edit. You'll see here, let me see if I can bump up the text. You'll see this bit of text. And let's see here, we have the target CocoaPods demo. Okay, so this is saying this is the target for the pods that we want to install. And here under hashtag pods for CocoaPods demo. So here, the hashtags or the pound signs, these are comments in this language. And all we gotta do is right here under the pods for CocoaPods demo, we just need to put in the pods that we want to use. Now, we are gonna be using AlamoFire and SwiftDJSON. So all you need to do is just search for AlamoFire, and you'll see here their GitHub repo. And down here, there will be a section for installing it. Don't worry about the rest of this. We'll go over that when we get there. Let's see here. CocoaPods. Oh, here we go. All right, so right here, this is what you want. Okay, so this is what our pod file kind of looks like right here. We have the target, and then we just copy this right here and jump back into our text edit file and paste that right there. All right, so we're saying to the CocoaPods dependency manager with this project, we're going to be using this pod file to tell CocoaPods which libraries to install inside of our Xcode project. All right, so we got AlamoFire. Let's open up a new browser. I'm going to search for SwiftDJSON, and we're going to go to the GitHub for that. And same thing, we're just going to come down here and look for how we add it to CocoaPods right here. And we have this line right here. Going to copy that, go back into our text edit, and go ahead and paste that as well. All right, so go ahead and save that, and we can quit out of this text edit file. open terminal back up. So what we have done is we have created our pod file and put in the pods that we want to install using CocoaPods. So once we have done that, all we have to do is say pod install. And it'll go through and analyze dependency, downloading dependencies, and then now it's installing it. And it recommends closing the project. So I'm going to go ahead and open Xcode back up and close this CocoaPods demo. And let's see if that's finished up. All right, so that is finished. So now, if we go ahead and we take a look at our CocoaPods demo project, now you'll see that we have a few new files. We have this folder, pods, and this has the Swifty.json and the Alamo Fire code. And then we also have this CocoaPods workspace here, okay? XC workspace. Before, we've always worked with an Xcode project. After you have installed CocoaPods, you always now need to work in the XC workspace, okay? Always use the white one after you have installed CocoaPods. So now I'm going to open that up. And if we check out our project directory here, now we have two targets. We have this one here, and now we have pods right here as well. And you can see that we have our frameworks, pods, we have the Alamo Fire and the Swifty.json folders here. And you can see that we have all of these Alamo Fire classes, and all of this is code that we now have access to be able to use in our project. All right, so perfect. That is installing our CocoaPods using Terminal. Now let's go over how to use their app. So I'm going to close this demo project, and we're back here in our star trivia, and going to go back to our browser and here in CocoaPods. And let's come up here to the top and go to the app right here, okay? So what we have here is this will do the same thing that we just did in Terminal, but here we have a nice little app, a nice GUI, graphical user interface, for us to do it a lot quicker, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and show you where to download right here. So you just download the CocoaPods.app, super simple, follow the instructions and install that. Once you have that, go ahead and open it up. If I can type it right. So we have CocoaPods here. So what you're gonna do is right up here, go to File, New Pod File from Xcode Project. And then we are going to go to your Star Trivia app. Mine's here on the desktop. And you open the .xcode project here and say open. And what that's going to do is that's going to initialize for you the pod file. And then all you have to do is go ahead and put those two pods that we already got. So coming back here to our browser, we had the Alamo Fire pod. I'm gonna copy that back into the CocoaPods app, paste it there. Then grab the Swifty.json, copy that, and paste it there. And then all you have to do is right here, click install. And that's gonna go ahead and install it for us. All right, and pod installation is complete. So now I'm going to close this Xcode project, stop tasks, and I'm going to reopen it. Let's see here, where are you? Right here. I'm gonna reopen the XC workspace, okay? So go ahead and double click on that. And now we have our workspace open and we have our pods here as well. All right, perfect. So now we have access to those two libraries for us to use Alamo Fire and Swifty.json. And we're gonna get started with Alamo Fire in the next lesson, learning how we can use that to make network requests instead of the URL session code that we already have, all right? So I'll see you then. Hey everyone, I am back with an update for this lesson. In this lesson, we took a look at Alamo Fire and we installed the CocoaPod with a version of 4.7. Now, since I created this lesson, it has updated to 5.0 beta versions. And if you install it with this, you're going to have some problems following along in the code. So instead, what you need to do is in your pod file, you need to use this specific version, 4.7.3, okay? And if you use this version, then you'll be able to follow along perfectly with the videos. Now, if you do want to use the latest and greatest Alamo Fire, I'll go ahead and show you what needs to be changed. You can copy this, come over here. I'll save this, come into terminal and do a pod install. So this is going to use the latest Alamofire beta, okay? And what you're about to see is the code that you'll be writing in the next couple of sessions. And the only thing that breaks is we're gonna be writing this code here. We're gonna say alamofire.request, all right? So the only thing that you need to change if you want to use this version of Alamofire is to change all of these Alamofires to af.request, okay? So af.request here, af.request here, af.request here, and af.request here. And let's run this, make sure it works. Oh, it looks like we got one more AF here as well. All right, and that is working. All right, so if you do want to use the latest Alamofire, you're welcome to. Just know that you will need to change any alamofire.requests to simply AF, and that's it. All right, so hope that clears up any issues any of you have been having, and I'll see you in the next one.